Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. In this video we're looking at a late penalty that ended up shaking up the race result in Barcelona, along with Kimi Antonelli receiving a punishment after his DNF. Let's start with Anteneelli because once again this season, he appeared to have the edge over teammate George Russell at a circuit where many expected Russell to be stronger. During the Barcelona Grand Prix weekend, Russell seemed to have the upper hand early on and put together a solid opening stint in the race. But as the Grand Prix unfolded, Antonelli's pace started to stand out in a big way. He steadily closed the gap to Russell, and the two Mercedes drivers went wheel to wheel in a tense battle before Antonelli eventually made the move stick and got ahead. Unfortunately, his race later came to an early end due to a reported electrical shutdown. So what was behind Antonelli's impressive speed advantage? One key factor may have been his performance in Sector 3. At turn 10, he was consistently running wide on corner exit, almost using the extra momentum like a launch pad toward turn 12. He then carried a very wide line through turn 12, helping him maintain strong speed through that section of the track. The problem was that Antonelli may have been pushing those limits a little too far. After the race, he was handed a 5-second post-race penalty for exceeding track limits on 4 separate occasions. The steward's decision stated that the car left the track 4 times during the race without a justifiable reason, turning what looked like a strong drive into a more controversial talking point. The stewards acknowledged that Antonelli did not receive a black and white warning flag after his 3rd track limits infringement. Instead, the warning was only shown after the 4th infringement because one of the earlier violations was not detected until later in the race. While some may see that as an unusual situation, the stewards made it clear that the regulations still apply regardless of when the infringement was officially identified. According to the current rules and driving standards guidelines, drivers remain responsible for staying within track limits at all times, and a delayed detection does not remove that responsibility. As a result, the penalty remained in place despite the timing of the warning flag. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my Formula 1 content and stay fully up to date with the latest F1 news, race analysis, penalties, driver developments, and major talking points from across the grid. Now let's move on to Franco Colapinto, who was hit with a costly penalty after being investigated for a yellow flag infringement. On the road, Colapinto crossed the finish line in P8 and looked set to take home a valuable result for Alpine. However, after the race, the stewards took a closer look at an incident involving yellow flag conditions, and that review ended up changing the outcome. The Alpine driver was judged to have not slowed sufficiently when Fernando Alonso pulled off the circuit and retired his Aston Martin between turns 8 and 9 on lap 38 of 66. Although Colapinto did lift off the throttle as he approached the area, officials concluded that the reduction in speed was not significant enough to satisfy the requirements under yellow flag regulations. That put him under scrutiny almost immediately. As a result, Colapinto received a 10-second post-race time penalty, along with 1 penalty point on his license. The steward's verdict stated, "The stewards determined that albeit the driver of car 43 slightly reduced speed before entering the single yellow flag zone, did not discernibly reduce speed in the relevant yellow flag sector." That ruling proved extremely costly and had a major impact on his final classification, turning what initially looked like a strong points finish into a frustrating setback. Stewards went on to explain that simply lifting off the throttle is not always enough under yellow flag conditions. Drivers are expected to show a clear and measurable reduction in speed when passing through a yellow flag sector, especially when there is a stopped car or a potentially dangerous situation nearby. In Colapinto's case, the officials reviewed the available data and concluded that the reduction in speed was not significant enough to meet the requirements set out in the regulations. That finding ultimately left the stewards with little room to avoid a penalty. Even though there was no suggestion of dangerous intent, Formula 1 has become increasingly strict when it comes to yellow flag compliance. Race control and the stewards place a huge emphasis on safety, and any failure to follow those standards is likely to attract close attention and possible sanctions. The penalty proved to be a frustrating blow for Colapinto because what initially looked like a strong result quickly became a much more difficult afternoon on paper. Valuable championship points and positions can be decided by the smallest margins, and post-race penalties often end up changing the story long after the checkered flag has fallen. For Alpine, it was another moment where attention shifted away from the on-track performance and toward an incident being reviewed by officials. Teams work incredibly hard throughout a race weekend to maximize every opportunity, which makes penalties like this particularly costly. A few seconds may not sound like much, but in modern Formula One, those seconds can completely reshape the final standings and leave drivers wondering what might have been if just one moment had played out differently. The stewards concluded their review by stating, "The stewards acknowledged that the driver reacted to the yellow flag, but do not consider the reaction to be sufficient to comply with the regulations. Therefore, a penalty on the lower end of the applicable scale of penalties is imposed." That decision may have seemed minor at first, but its impact on the final results was significant. As mentioned earlier, Colapinto originally crossed the finish line in P8 and appeared set to secure a valuable result for Alpine. However, once the 10-second penalty was applied, the standings changed dramatically. The Alpine driver was dropped down to P10, falling behind the Racing Bulls pair of Liam Lawson and Arvid Lindblad. It was a costly outcome and another reminder of how even small penalties can have major consequences in Formula One, where every position matters. And with that, that's going to wrap up today's video. Thank you so much for watching and for all of your incredible support. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with other Formula One fans so they don't miss the latest news and analysis. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the penalty was fair or was it too harsh? I'd love to hear your opinion. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.